Okay, in this tutorial I'm going to talk about what a reflex arc is. So let's get straight into it. Alright, a reflex arc. So, a reflex arc, it's kind of what we've been looking at already, but there's a slight difference. So essentially, let's come back to our model before of how we respond or sense things. So firstly, for instance, if our hand is pushed on a pin, we'll have pain receptors. We'll send a message via a sensory neuron, step 2. So the message, an electrical impulse, gets sent down the sensory neuron and into, now this is a section of the spinal cord. So you've got a section of the spine here. And inside the spinal cord is an interneuron or a relay neuron, which essentially passes that message up to the brain. Right? And then a message gets passed on to a motor neuron. So you see here the cell body within the spinal cord, and an impulse will travel down here until it reaches some sort of effector, like our muscle. So reflex arc, a reflex action, or a reflex arc is essentially when we respond to something really quickly and in a kind of an involuntary way. And these things ensure that we don't cause any further damage to our body. So a reflex arc is a really quick response where we don't even have time to think about it. Our body responds before we even think about it. So what's different about a reflex arc and the regular types of response or the regular types of neural pathways we've been looking at so far? Well, the real difference is simply this. The stimulus sends a signal via the sensory neuron, and when it reaches the interneuron, this relay neuron here, rather than waiting for a signal to go up to the brain and a signal to come back down from the brain, so rather than stopping and thinking about it, sending signals up to the brain and back down again, essentially a message gets passed straight onto the motor neuron. So here the electrical impulse goes through the sensory neuron, through the interneuron, and goes straight into the motor neuron. So it bypasses the brain. And this essentially means the response happens before we even know it. Alright, so before the signal has even reached up in the brain, or we have any chance to actually respond, we've already sent a signal out to the muscles to make us move. And this really just ensures that we don't waste any time thinking about what needs to happen when we really need to just respond quickly. So if we put our hand on a pin or on something hot, like in a fire or something, what's going to happen is the signal is going to go, so a strong stimulus that kind of often is a sign that something's causing us damage. It's going to send a strong signal down this the sensory neuron, and it's going to go straight through the interneuron, bypassing the brain is the key bit, straight out the motor neuron, and going to make our muscle kind of spasm or move away from whatever's causing it damaged. And so these are kind of pre-programmed or connected, so that essentially it'll result in a movement away from whatever's causing us damage. So if you touch something with the open side of your hand and it burns you, it'll make your arm pull away, essentially, to prevent further damage. So a reflex arc, it's not really any different from the what we covered in the neurons tutorial, except that the message doesn't go up to the brain and then come back down and come out. It goes directly from the sensory to the interneuron onto this motor neuron, bypassing the brain, ensuring an immediate, quick response. I've uploaded another YouTube clip to this playlist. It's not one I made, but there's a lovely little sort of claymation video. Got some funky music in the background too, so check that one out. Quickly explaining what a reflex arc is. Looks a little bit like this. Alright, so just to go through the steps one more time, you need to know these for your tests, so just the steps in a reflex arc or in a reflex action. Okay, so the first one, stimulus. So something, usually a very strong stimulus, something's telling us that something's causing damage to our body. Alright, an electrical impulse goes down a sensory neuron, so this is part of the peripheral nervous system. It reaches an interneuron or a relay neuron, which is part of the central nervous system, and is found usually in the spinal cord. And essentially here, they will send a signal up to the brain, but essentially that's just to let the brain know what's going on. It doesn't wait for a response from the brain. It passes the signal also straight onto a motor neuron. So a signal does actually go up to the brain, but it will probably only reach the brain after we've already responded, or there's no time to actually think about how we're going to respond. A message is sent straight through this motor neuron, which again is part of the peripheral nervous system, straight onto an effector, so something like a muscle which will contract and make us move away, preventing any kind of further damage. So really you just need to know the steps in a reflex arc, and just be aware that the purpose of it, the reason for a reflex arc is just so that sometimes it's best to just move that part of the body away without actually having time to think about what we're doing. Our body does it automatically. Okay guys, I hope you found that helpful. Nice little quick one, and check out the other funky video on a little claymation video showing a reflex arc.